Dear friends, followers, and fellow adventurers, today, our hearts beat with exhilaration as we stand at the precipice of a thrilling new chapter. It is with overflowing joy and a touch of nervous anticipation that we invite you to join us in celebrating the release of our very first video on YouTube. With bated breath, we present to you the culmination of countless hours of creativity, dedication, and unwavering passion. Through this pixelated window into our souls, we hope to touch your hearts, ignite your imaginations, and forge connections that transcend. In this vast digital universe, we have found solace and inspiration. We have marveled at the boundless creativity and unshakable spirit that reside within each of you. Today, we humbly step into this realm, eager to share our own unique story, woven with threads of laughter, tears, and the raw authenticity of the human experience. As you press play and embark on this journey with us, we invite you to open your hearts wide. Within the frames of this video, you will find moments of vulnerability, unfiltered emotions, and a shared humanity that unites us all. It is our sincerest hope that you will feel seen, heard, and embraced as we navigate the labyrinthine corridors of life together. With each passing second, we traverse landscapes of wonder, laughter, and sometimes even pain. Yet, through it all, we are bound by an unbreakable bond forged by pixels and sound waves. The power of this medium lies in its ability to connect us, to remind us that our stories, though unique, are intertwined in a tapestry of shared experiences. Today, we welcome you into our virtual home. May this first video be a testament to our unwavering commitment to create, inspire, and spread love across the digital expanse. Together, we shall defy limits, shatter barriers, and leave an indelible mark upon the vast canvas of human So, dear friends, as we clasp hands and take this leap of faith, let us embark on this remarkable adventure together. Let us celebrate the release of our first YouTube video, knowing that it is merely the first step in a grand symphony of emotions waiting to be played. Thank you for being here with us, for embracing the power of storytelling, and for reminding us that in this boundless realm of digital creation, our voices are not only heard, but cherished. Welcome, with all our love, to the beginning of something truly extraordinary. Yours sincerely, Minerva. Well, let's go. Prologue through Chapter 2. The female with the dragon tattoo, by means of Stieg Larsson, is a multifaceted mystery, weaving a complex internet of murder, economic malfeasance, and psychological intrigue. Journalist Mikael Blomkvist is going through a month prison term for libel, while aged industrialist Heinrich Wenger hires him to investigate the homicide of his niece, Harriet, extra than 4 decades formerly. Blomkvist is to conduct his mystery investigation underneath the guise of writing a biography of Wenger's complicated and dysfunctional family. Blomkvist hires Lisbeth Salander, a young, proficient investigator and computer hacker with deep mental issues, to assist along with his studies, and the two unwittingly find themselves at the path of a sadistic serial killer. The prologue takes area on a Friday in November. A pressed flower is introduced to the house of a man who's celebrating his 82nd birthday. This takes place each year, and as common, he telephones retired Detective Superintendent Morrill. This has come to be an annual ritual for the two guys, even though there are by no means any new clues as to who sends the plant life that have been coming for 44 years now. After striking up the cell phone, the antique guy locations the flower, which is called Barren Region Snow and is native to Australia, at the wall with the others and begins to weep. Chapter 1 opens on December 20 and introduces Mikael Blomkvist, a journalist residing in Stockholm. He is every so often referred to as Karl or Carl after a younger detective in Astrid Lindgren's books for children. He earned the nickname while he became 23 and just starting his career, and he was instrumental in identifying and shooting a collection of infamous financial institution robbers. Now, Blomkvist has been convicted of libeling and defaming Swedish financier Hans Erik Wennerström. He recollects that the story began whilst he became on a sailing journey with some associates and bumped into an antique faculty buddy, Robert Lindberg. As they drank collectively one night, Lindberg instructed Blomkvist approximately an incident a few years earlier in which Wennerström apparently absconded with 60 million kroner, telling Blomkvist that he ought to use the statistics to put in writing about Wennerström, however that he could not, say in which he acquired it. In hindsight, Blomkvist realizes that agreeing to this was a mistake. Bankruptcy 2 introduces Lisbeth Salander, an investigator for Milton Security. At 24 years old, with a goth-like look and some of tattoos which include a dragon on her shoulder blade, she appears out of region as a private investigator, but she is verified to be fantastic at the job. She is thorough, however unorthodox, and her boss, Dragan Armansky, values her greatly, despite the fact that he does not permit her to fulfill with the prestigious company's customers. Nowadays is an exception. Lawyer Dirch Frode is within the workplace to hear Salander deliver the document he has commissioned on Mikael Blomkvist. She affords background statistics about his existence and career, but Frode becomes extra attentive while she says that she thinks Blomkvist could have been installation on the Wennerström count due to the fact he did not do his traditional thorough research. Frode hires the firm and Salander to investigate the problem in addition. Earlier than the meeting ends, Salander mentions that even though Blomkvist has been concerned with a number of girls, including one marriage that produced a daughter he hardly ever sees, he has had an ongoing relationship with Erika Berger, editor-in-chief of Millennium, the mag they co-founded. She is married to artist Gregor Beckman, who is aware of about the unusual relationship and condones it. Chapters 3 through 7. It's Miles a few days earlier than Christmas, and Blomkvist and Berger are speaking inside the places of work of Millennium Mag. He feels that he has gotten a raw deal with the verdict and insists that the handiest way the magazine will live to tell the tale is that if he resigns, Berger disagrees. But for the reason that Meg is already dropping advertisers, she decides to go along with his plan. Blomkvist and Berger met at a party 20 years earlier and right now began slumbering together. Ultimately, both married others, but their continued sexual relationship sooner or later broke up his marriage, despite the fact that her husband, artist Gregor Beckman, accepts their relationship. While the Millennium places of work are closed for the Christmas vacations, Blomkvist is going in to smooth out his office. At the same time as he is there, lawyer Dirch Frode telephones him and says he has a client who wants to rent him for a freelance activity, but insists on meeting him in man or woman. Blomkvist is amazed while he identifies the client as Heinrich Wenger, a retired industrialist who previously headed a large family, owned commercial enterprise, and is now in his 80s. Frode refuses to provide more information, so Blomkvist makes a decision to think about the proposition, and after Frode leaves, he looks up a few statistics on Wenger and his agency at the net. On Christmas Day, Salander visits her mom, who apparently has dementia and lives in a nursing home, and Blomkvist spends a few hours with his daughter, then goes to his sister Annika's home for dinner. Later on, he calls Frode and concurs to tour to Hedeby Island to fulfill with Vanger. While he arrives on the own family compound, Vanger tells Blomkvist that he genuinely lived on the property for some time, whilst he turned into approximately 3 years vintage after Vanger hired his father to perform a little work for him, despite the fact that Blomkvist does not bear in mind it. Vanger says he wants Blomkvist to do matters for him, the primary of that's writing a records of the Vanger family, along with a fantastic deal of dust, simply for the cause of revenge. He then gives Blomkvist a top-level view of the Own family. This consists of his brother Richard, Richard's son Gottfried, and his spouse Isabella, and their kids Harriet and Martin. Martin currently runs the Circle of Relatives enterprise, however, is allowing it to decline. When Blomkvist asks approximately Harriet, Vanger says that the second part of his venture is to use the studies he conducts for the biography to discover who murdered Harriet and has been seeking to pressure him insane for 40 years. In Chapter 5, Vanger tells Blomkvist approximately Harriet. On September 24, 1966, the Vanger family had collected for its annual dinner at which they discussed enterprise. The occasion became typically very unpleasant. Harriet became then residing inside the essential residence with Vanger, her incredible uncle, in place of together with her mother and father. She arrived domestic approximately 2 p.m., seeming upset and asking to talk with him. However, he had other subjects to take care of and said he'd talk together with her later. Rapidly later on, a bad accident took place on the bridge to the island, which drew numerous people to the scene to help and resulted in the bridge being closed for 24 hours. Later, within the afternoon, the family accrued for dinner, but Harriet turned into nowhere to be discovered and become never visible once more. After hard or discounting other possibilities, Vanger concluded that she had been murdered and that it ought to were someone in his family because everybody turned into trapped either at the island or off it with the aid of the twist of fate. Meanwhile, Salander reads Blomkvist's debatable ebook, Approximately Economic Journalism, and thinks he is a good author. Later, she sends an encrypted 1E5-70751. A 968,270,50,207 to the cope, what plukeni smixty stocks. 900. The message is, have you bought time? She then is going out and waits out of doors. A constructing till and vintage woman comes along and opens the door, giving Salander a risk to read the access code and go into the constructing. She takes a few photographs of the meters and fused packing containers, and at the way out, she appears at the resident listing and sees that the top floor is occupied by using a person named Winterstrom. When she gets domestic, there may be a reaction to her 1X55X77501968,271 Bell 2K9,862,907 Bankruptcy 6 maintains the dialogue between Vanger and Blomkvist concerning Harriet's loss of life. And Vanger says his obsession along with her loss of life is what caused him to, again, far away from running the commercial enterprise. He suggests Blomkvist the gathering of pressed flowers and tells him that Harriet used to ship him one on his birthday each 12 months. Then they persevered to reach after her disappearance. Blomkvist is intrigued, however. Nevertheless hesitant, Vanger asks him to sign a contract to live on the assets for 365 days, writing the biography and seeking out Harriet's assassins in the system for the sum of 2.4 million kroner, to be doubled if he solves the thriller. In Go Back for Blomkvist's pleasant effort, Wenger will even supply him evidence that Winterstrom is a swindler based on something that took place 35 years ago when he labored for Wenger. Inside the meantime, Salander is going to satisfy a person she calls Plague, from whom she gets a digital cuff and instructions on how to use it. In Chapter 7, Blomkvist has determined to simply accept Wenger's provide, but Berger is sad about it and is afraid he's going to by no means come again. Armansky calls Salander to tell her that Frode has advised them to drop the investigation of Winterstrom. However, she hates to provide it up because she is turning into involved in Blomkvist's conduct all through his trial. Chapters 8 through 9. Bankruptcy 8, which takes location in early January, unearths Blomkvist arriving at the Wenger estate, in which he'll stay in a guest house on the assets. Wenger takes him on a tour of the place and introduces him to numerous human beings. The duvet story for Blomkvist's presence is that he's supporting Wenger write his autobiography, which will allow him to poke round in family business. Wenger also fills Blomkvist in on various individuals of his big-owned family, a number of whom he thinks are viable suspects and others now not. Blomkvist reminds him that he's going to have to serve his jail sentence in some unspecified time in the future and that he must go back to Stockholm at times to take care of Mag Commercial Enterprise, and Wenger says he is probably able to help with the Mag's monetary troubles. After getting settled in his residence, Blomkvist takes a stroll around the village. He also attempts several times to cell phone Berger, however, is by no means able to reach her. The following day, Wenger has all of the heritage records on Harriet's disappearance added to Blomkvist, and it is a big amount of cloth. Wenger starts going via the material meticulously, but he begins to surprise why he took this mission due to the fact he feels so remoted. He learns that Detective Inspector Gustav Morell had been the lead investigator at the case. It appears that Morell conducted a radical search and investigation, which includes interviewing own family members, but got here up without a clues. In Bankruptcy 9, Blomkvist meets Martin Wenger, Henrik's nephew and Harriet's brother, who now runs the enterprise and lives at the belongings. Whilst most of the homes in the compound are vintage, Martin lives in a modern domestic he constructed some years in the past. Blomkvist continues studying the background material and attempting unsuccessfully to attain Berger. Back in Stockholm, Salander has an assembly with Niels Bjerman, her guardian. She were a hard infant and teenager, being placed inside and out of establishments and guardianships, and while she had turned 13, the court determined that a trustee ought to be assigned to take care of her hobbies till she had become of age. The trustee had been lawyer Holger Palmgren, who had gradually received her belief and had recommended her for the job at Milton Safety. Some months earlier, Palmgren had suffered a stroke from which he would now not get better, so German were assigned as her new dad or mum, and Salander does not like him. Although Palmgren had allowed her to deal with her personal price range, German has taken that privilege far from her, giving her a monthly allowance while he can pay her payments and puts money into financial savings for her. While he questions her about her process at Milton Security, she leads him to trust she does menial tasks, like making coffee and sorting electronic mail. Blomkvist keeps to study more approximately the Wenger Circle of Relatives' history, consisting of the truth that Circle of Relatives members can't sell their organization stock outside the Circle of Relatives. It's also clean that Heinrich Wenger has little use for most of his Circle of Relatives and is hated particularly by his brother Harold, who lives on the property. Harold, a Nazi, hates Henrik due to the fact he fell in love with and married a Jewish female. Chapters 10 through 12. Chapter 10. which takes area between January 9 and 31, unearths Blomkvist getting to know Martin Wenger and his female friend Eva. Blomkvist considers broaching the subject of Harriet's disappearance. However, Martin doesn't seem inclined to talk about it. He also meets Harold's daughter Cecilia, who is sad approximately the ebook Blomkvist is writing and is bored with her uncle's obsession over Harriet, whom she believes met within twist of fate. He also meets Harriet's mother, Isabella, who is angry approximately everybody poking into circle of relatives business. Later, Blomkvist spends a day with Morel, who thinks Harriet changed into murdered, perhaps because she become approximately to reveal something to Wenger that could incriminate or disappointed a family member. He tells Blomkvist that each police officer has an unsolved thriller that bothers him, and Harriet is his. Blomkvist continues to satisfy different circle of relatives, individuals, with the notable exception of Harold, who lives in the house round the corner to his, however is reclusive and is by no means visible. Blomkvist learns from his lawyer that he should record to prison on March 17, however, that his month sentence probable may be shortened. He meets day by day with Wenger, is turning into more serious about the mystery, and he has now not yet started to work on his plan to take down Winstrom. Wenger notices that Blomkvist seems a chunk off balance occasionally and locations a 20-minute call to someone in Stockholm on the topic of Blomkvist. Berger comes to visit Blomkvist for the weekend and tells him the magazine is in serious economic problem. In the meantime, Salander meets again with German, who smells of alcohol and asks a number of intimate questions about her sex life. In Bankruptcy 11, Wenger invitations Blomkvist and Berger to spend the evening with him and asks approximately the status of the mag. He offers to grow to be an associate in Millennium for you to remedy its economic troubles. However, only at the situation that Blomkvist return as writer. They exercise session a deal. However, Blomkvist is sad due to the fact he is not consulted. As Blomkvist continues going via the documents, he learns that Harriet changed over the past 12 months of her life. She had ended up quieter, withdrawn from different people, and greater spiritual. But in an interview with Morel, her cousin Anita disagrees with the opinion that she have been introverted. Blomkvist also reads Harriet's diary. That's fairly sketchy. However, on the ultimate page, there is a listing of 5 names and cell phone numbers. Even though Morel had focused a tremendous deal of attention on them, he had now not been capable of figure out who the humans are or whether it is some form of code. After Berger returns to Stockholm, Blomkvist sees a light on in Cecilia's residence, and while he stops in to go to her, they have intercourse. Salander's laptop is damaged when a car runs over it, so she goes to Bjurman to invite for Cash to update it. He forces her to perform oral intercourse on him, telling her that if she is best to him, he might be first. Great to her. He also warns her that if she tells each person, he can have her institutionalized. Bankruptcy 12 opens with a lengthy description of the erratic behavior that brought about Salander being positioned beneath a guardianship. Due to her heritage and mistrust of police, she is unable to document Bjurman's rape. However, it's Miles mentioned that she usually gets revenge. Her youth had protected many bodily fights with both boys and girls, and her classmates had concept she was loopy. As she had reached her teenage years, all the evil occurred, which set her on a route that brought about being positioned underneath guardianship. Blomkvist and Cecilia communicate after intercourse, and he or she asks him to be discreet approximately their relationship. In addition, they talk about the modifications Harriet exhibited at some stage in her closing 12 months, and Cecilia notes that she hadn't confided in everyone. She also tells Blomkvist that Harriet's father drowned after getting under the influence of alcohol and falling from his rowboat, and that Martin had him. She says that Martin had a tough time throughout his teenage years, but has turned out very well in the long run. Salander considers confiding in a person about her problems and requesting recommendation, but she has few buddies and reductions, all of them for diverse reasons. She realizes that she will ought to take topics into her very own palms, which does now not bode well for German. Chapters 13 via 16. Salander begins investigating German, hoping to locate something she can use to change her state of affairs. But the consequences are discouraging. His report appears to be clean, and she or he cannot discover absolutely everyone who says whatever terrible about him or his work as a mother or father for youngsters. She considers killing him, likely with the aid of causing a coronary heart assault, but comes to a decision that what she surely needs is the potential to manipulate him and her scenario. Whilst he asks her to return to see him at his domestic in preference to his workplace, he brutally rapes her anally and tells her to come back again the following week. He has concluded that she is mentally disabled and therefore could no longer be believed if she suggested him. Blomkvist falls right into a recurring and starts of evolve to open up to Cecilia. He is making development at the Vanger Circle of Relatives Chronicle, however, not at the murder investigation, despite the fact that he does assume that the list of names and numbers in Harriet's diary must imply something. As Bankruptcy 14 opens, Salander takes a few days to recover from the brutal rape. She does a few research and realizes that Benjamin is a sadist and has selected her as his victim. She receives another tattoo, a slender band round her ankle, and tells the tattoo artist that she wants it as a reminder. On the agreed-upon time, Salander returns to Benjamin's condo. However, as they cross into the bedroom, she tasers him. While he's unconscious, she ties him up and searches his bedroom, locating a ramification of sadistic sex paraphernalia. Whilst he awakens, she shows him a DV she had secretly recorded of the previous rape. She recorded it with a tiny digital camera hidden in her backpack, thinking he could ask for oral sex once more. However, alternatively, we're given evidence of the way ill German genuinely is. She instructs him to never touch her once more, supply her control of her price range, prepare sparkling reviews approximately her behavior and development, and in a year or make certain that she is launched from guardianship. She then tattoos his midsection to mention, "I'm a sadistic pig, a pervert, and a rapist," and suggests that she will kill him if she ever learns that he has been with a female, even of the female's personal loose will. Blomkvist starts his prison time period at the same day. Millennium declares that Vanger will be element owner of the magazine. Salander is in Armansky's office and hears the tale at the radio with Hobby. She starts to recognize that there's a mysterious connection between Winterstrom, Vanger, and Blomkvist, and makes a decision to investigate similarly on her very own. In Chapter 15, Blomkvist completes his sentence and returns to Hedeby. Vanger tells him that things are enhancing at the magazine, however, that Winterstrom is trying to organize a boycott amongst advertisers. Blomkvist is going to look Cecilia, but she tells him to depart. He is going lower back to paintings at the investigation, and in going via some image albums, he sees that at the least 20 photos taken on the day of Harriet's disappearance consist of Cecilia. His intuition tells him that that is important. However, he is not positive why. Later, Cecilia comes to his cottage and says she is in love with him and that they have sex. Berger arrives abruptly and unearths them together, but shrugs it off. The following Monday, Blomkvist goes to take a look at Gottfried's cabin that is now owned through Martin and is located on a far-flung part of the island. In Bankruptcy 16, Blomkvist eventually receives a break in his investigation. He sees a picture of Harriet taken at the parade she attended some hours before her disappearance. She is seeking to the facet and looks nervous by using what she sees. He additionally unearths a photo taken on the day of the disappearance showing Cecilia in Harriet's bedroom window. Blomkvist starts looking to music down other photos taken on the parade that would display what Harriet turned into searching at, chapter 17 through 19. Blomkvist tells Wenger about the pics he found, but not the fact that Cecilia changed into in Harriet's room. His daughter arrives and he learns that she has gotten concerned in a non-secular sect. A comment she makes reasons him to comprehend that the numbers on Harriet's listing are in reality references to biblical verses as opposed to cell phone numbers. In the end, he determines that the names or initials on the listing is probably sufferers of brutal murders that came about a few years ago, and the Bible verses seek advice from the manner in which every female turned into murdered. Wenger has a serious heart attack and is hospitalized. Blomkvist tells Frode what he has learned and asks for a studies assistant. Frode right now thinks of Salander, and by chance lets it slip that he had her look into Blomkvist, who needs to peer the document. While he reads it, he realizes how a great deal Wenger had recognized about him and the magazine from the beginning, and that Salander should only have gotten the data via hacking into his computer. In Bankruptcy 18, Blomkvist suggests up at Salander's door and says he needs her to help him with his research. Armansky has accredited, and they signal a settlement. Returning home, Blomkvist is sure someone has been in his house, despite the fact that nothing appears to be disturbed. As chapter 19 opens, Blomkvist visits Wenger at the sanatorium, and Wenger tells him to preserve the research even supposing he dies. Martin stops by to inform Blomkvist that due to the fact that Wenger is unwell, he'll step into his spot on the mag's board. Salander visits her mom, who does not appear to understand her. Blomkvist maintains seeking out pictures so one can offer a clue regarding what Harriet noticed at the parade, and Salander starts off getting to know the list of murder victims. She additionally unearths at least person who fits the pattern, however, isn't at the list. Chapters 24 via 27. As he is held prisoner, Blomkvist realizes that Martin remains killing girls after first maintaining them in his torture chamber. As he prepares to kill Blomkvist, Martin explains that his father, Gottfried, taught him to torture and kill women, and that he disposes of the bodies by dumping them at sea. Martin asks Blomkvist what came about to Harriet, and Blomkvist realizes that Martin did no longer kill her in any case. Martin says that he had deliberate to kill her. However, he arrived too overdue and turned into unable to get to the island. Within the meantime, Salander maintains to go through vintage business enterprise newsletters and spots a picture of younger Martin carrying the pink jacket, so she too realizes it was Martin who fearful Harriet at the parade. At 11:30, she begins to tell the night watchman she's leaving, but in view that it's a long walk to the other facet of the building, she surely leaves. When she attempts to name Blomkvist, she sees that he is referred to as her 13 instances among 3:30 and 9 p.m. However, nothing inside the beyond hours. Arriving at the empty cottage, she goes via the video from the surveillance cameras she hooked up and figures out that he ought to have gone to Martin's house. Martin is ready to strangle and likely rape Blomkvist when Salander arrives, beats Martin with a golf membership, and rescues Blomkvist. Martin escapes in a vehicle but intentionally crashes into an oncoming truck as Salander chases him and his automobile bursts into flames. Salander takes care of Blomkvist, but insists that they don't notify the police. She wipes away all their fingerprints and gets rid of any evidence that they were in Martin's residence. In Bankruptcy 25, Salander returns to Martin's residence and collects evidence of his crimes. She realizes that his aim turned into violence and killing, but his actual interests were inside the hunt, which fueled his sexual fantasy. She burns all of Martin's specified facts and drops his CC into the lake. Whilst Frode arrives with the information of Martin's loss of life, Salander tells him what passed off and says it is up to him what to do with the facts, but that he is to leave Blomkvist and herself out of it. Blomkvist is uncomfortable, however realizes they have now waited too long to call the police. Going over what they recognize, Blomkvist and Salander recognize that Gottfried raped Martin and taught him to rape his sister Harriet. Blomkvist tells Wenger he is leaving for a while and asks if he nonetheless desires to recognize the fact. Wenger says yes, and Blomkvist promises he'll come turned when he can. He goes to London and reveals Anita, who refuses to speak to him. Salander's friend Plague has organized surveillance, so when Anita calls a person in Australia right now after Blomkvist's visit, they're capable of trace the call. Salander and Blomkvist put together to visit Australia, but she stays in the back of whilst her mom dies. In Australia, Blomkvist reveals Harriet residing below the call, Anita Cochran, and jogging a large sheep farm. He tells her the whole thing that has came about, and she or he tells him her tale. While she turned into a teenager, her father raped her for 12 months, and her mom did not anything even though she knew. At some point, Gottfried took her to his cabin and instructed her about the ladies he had killed, quoting the Bible verses she later recorded in her diary. Harriet were given away, and when Gottfried chased her, she pushed him into the water and held him underneath until he drowned. Martin noticed this and raped her, and from then on, she changed into in his strength until he changed into dispatched away to high school. At the day of the parade, she noticed him throughout the street and found out she'd by no means be freed from him. So inside the confusion, after the twist of fate, Anita smuggled her off the island, helped her leave the USS, and stayed in contact with her over the years. She married Australian sheep rancher Spencer Cochran, who's now deceased, and had a family with him. She tells Blomkvist she is relieved to have sooner or later instructed someone the tale. In Bankruptcy 27, Blomkvist accompanies Salander to her mom's funeral. The only other man or woman there's Armansky. Afterward, Blomkvist tells Salander Harriet's full tale, and she blames Harriet for not taking action in the starting, which might have avoided Martin from murdering so many girls. The two have an argument while Salander mistakes Blomkvist's gesture of friendship for a choice for sex, and she or he leaves, but later returns and Blomkvist realizes she probably has Asperger's syndrome. Meanwhile, Harriet returns to Hedeby and reunites with Wenger. She reveals that she is the one who has dispatched the pressed flora every ire, wondering Wenger would realize that she become alive and properly. As phrase spreads about Martin's demise and Harriet's go back, there is an awful lot confusion over what's going to happen with the organization. However, Wenger decides Harriet will be the excellent desire for a new CEO. Wenger asks Blomkvist now not to write approximately Gottfried and Martin for the sake of Harriet and his company, and he vaguely threatens to harm the mag. Salander says that she is not certain through journalistic ethics, so in return for her silence, She needs that Frode perceive as many of Martin's sufferers as viable and compensate their households, and that the Vanger organization donate 2 million kroner annually to groups for girls in disaster. Chapters 28 through epilogue. Again in Stockholm, Salander tells Blomkvist approximately the electronic cuff she attached to Winterström's broadband cable that enabled her to intercept all his laptop fax. They undergo the financial facts, however, have Hazel figuring out what he and his organizations were doing. Blomkvist movements to his rustic cabin in Sandom and begins writing furiously. Salander arrives with extra of Winterström's computer information and stays, taking part in playing residence. Harriet takes over Vanger's spot at the magboard and wants to befriend Blomkvist and Berger. As Blomkvist is working, he tells Salander that Winterström had an affair with a 22-year vintage waitress, were given her pregnant, and had certainly one of his thugs preserve her underwater until she agreed to get an abortion without a compensation. This piques Salander's interest, and she starts a evolved reading through Winterström's emails and other files, subsequently arising within concept. Blomkvist sooner or later finishes his paintings and offers it to Berger. He refuses to tell her about the horrors they skilled with Martin. However, he tells her that Salander saved his lifestyles and that they must shield her as a private supply. Winterström's empire is complex and consists of some legitimate corporations as well as others that are clearing houses for illegal guns, money laundering, and different crook hobby. Salander borrows 120,000 kroner from Blomkvist, announcing she needs it for handiest 6 weeks, however refuses to tell him what she wishes it for. She goes to Zurich and, using a sequence of false identities and disguises, steals $260 million from Winström's mystery bills. In Bankruptcy 30, Blomkvist's story and an accompanying book are posted, and they may be bombshells. The statistics is subsidized up by using emails and other documentation from Winterström's own laptop, and the tale implies that Blomkvist Universal his jail sentence instead of monitor the source of his records. The blow to Winterström's empire sends the Swedish inventory change right into a freefall. Winterström disappears and is determined dead 6 months later. He has been shot. We study that Salander knew that on account that she had cleaned out his mystery bills, he now not had the money he needed to pay off the Colombian mafia, and he or she became his address over to a Miami attorney, considering it payback for the impregnated waitress. Subsequently, Blomkvist reads approximately Winterström's bank accounts being wiped clean out and recognizes a picture of Salander, no matter her conceal, and figuring out what she has executed, he starts off evolved giggling hysterically. It's Miles now, December, and Blomkvist, and Salander visit his cabin for the holidays. When she struggles to become aware of her emotions, she realizes she is in love with him. Blomkvist makes one remaining go-to to Edeby to acquire his price from Vanger and says he won't write a chronicle of the Vanger family. Cecilia and Harriet are actually jogging the Vanger Corporation. Because the ebook concludes, Salander is going to tell Blomkvist about her emotions for him. However, while she sees him with Berger, she actually turns around and leaves. Thank you until later.